when Justine Wilson stood outside a pawn shop in Los Angeles, holding a small velvet box. She had no idea her life was about to change forever. Inside that box was her wedding ring, the same ring Elon Musk had given her back in 2000 when they got married. Now, in 2008, after 8 years of marriage and a painful divorce, she was ready to sell it. She needed the money, but more than that, she needed to let go of the past and find herself again. Justine had been married to one of the most famous men in the world, Elon Musk, the billionaire CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, the man who wanted to put humans on Mars. But being married to someone that successful had cost Justine everything. She'd lost her dreams of becoming a writer. She'd lost her identity. Everyone knew her as Elon Musk's wife, and then Elon Musk's ex-wife. Nobody knew her as just Justine anymore. So there she stood, staring at the pawn shop window, ready to walk inside and sell the ring for cash. It would help her take care of her 5 young sons. It would give her a fresh start. Most importantly, it would finally set her free from being defined by her marriage to Elon. Her hands shook as she gripped the box. This was it, the moment she'd been building up to for weeks. She took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The bell chimed as she walked inside. She approached the counter and placed the velvet box down. "I need to sell this," she told the pawn shop owner. He opened the box and examined the diamond ring. "I can give you $4,000, he said. $4,000. The ring had cost $22,000, but Justine didn't care about the money anymore. She just wanted it gone. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Sure, but I close in an hour." Justine picked up the box and held it close to her chest. 1 hour to make the biggest decision of her life. She turned to leave the shop, her mind racing. And that's when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and looked at the screen. A text message from an unknown number. 3 simple words that made her blood run cold. "Don't do it." Justine's heart started pounding. Who was this? How did they know where she was? How did they know what she was doing? She rushed outside and looked around. Was someone watching her, following her? Her hands trembled as she typed back, "Who is this?" The response came quickly. "We need to talk. Patricia, Mr. Musk's office." Elon knew. Somehow her ex-husband knew she was trying to sell her wedding ring, and he was trying to stop her. But why? They were divorced. He'd moved on with his life. Why would he care about a ring? Another text appeared. "Mr. Musk would like to meet. Tomorrow, noon, you know where, please come." Justine stared at her phone in shock. Elon wanted to see her. At the same cafe where he'd proposed 8 years ago. What could he possibly want to say? What could he do? And most importantly, why did he care? The next day, when Justine walked into that cafe and sat across from Elon, neither of them knew this meeting would change everything. What happened next shocked not just Justine, but eventually the entire world. What did Elon say to her that day? What did he do when he found out she was selling her ring? And how did one woman's decision to sell a piece of jewelry end up inspiring millions of people around the world? Stay with us through this entire story to find out how a simple wedding ring became a symbol of survival, strength, and finding yourself again. Because what Elon Musk did next, nobody saw it coming, not even Justine herself. This is the true story of Justine Wilson, the woman who almost sold her wedding ring and discovered something far more valuable than diamonds. Let's begin at the very beginning, when a young literature student at Queen's University met an awkward South African boy who said he was going to colonize Mars. The afternoon sun beat down on Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles as Justine Wilson Musk stood frozen on the sidewalk. Her fingers gripped a small velvet box so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Inside that box sat a diamond ring, the ring Elon had slipped onto her finger in January 2000, when everything seemed possible and their future stretched out like an endless highway. It was March 2008, and that future had crashed and burned. Through the dusty window of Bernie's pawn shop, Justine could see rows of forgotten treasures, guitars that would never play music again, watches that had stopped marking time, wedding rings from other broken marriages lined up like tiny monuments to failed dreams. Soon her ring would join them. She took a deep breath and tried to steady her trembling hands. This shouldn't be so hard. It was just a ring, just metal and stone, just a symbol of something that didn't exist anymore. She and Elon had been divorced for months now. 8 years of marriage finished, done, over. So why did it feel like she was about to cut off her own finger? A bus roared past and Justine caught her reflection in the pawn shop window. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was 35 years old, but today she felt ancient. Behind her, the Los Angeles traffic hummed and honked. People rushed past with coffee cups and shopping bags, living their normal lives. None of them knew that Justine Wilson Musk, yes, that Musk, was about to pawn her wedding ring in a shop that also sold used video games and old guitars. The bell above the shop door tinkled as someone exited, and the sound made Justine jump. She needed to do this. She needed the money. More importantly, she needed to let go. 5 boys were waiting for her at home. Griffin and Vivian, her twins, just 4 years old, and the triplets, Kai, Saxon, and Damien, only 2 years old. 5 beautiful, exhausting, wonderful boys who needed everything: food, clothes, attention, love, stability. The things money could buy and the things it couldn't. Justine was trying to be both mother and father now, even though technically they had joint custody. But Elon was busy. He was always busy. Tesla Motors was hemorrhaging money. SpaceX had just suffered another failed rocket launch. The 2008 financial crisis was crushing his companies like a vice. She understood. She really did. Elon was trying to save the world, or at least change it. Electric cars, rockets to Mars, big, impossible dreams. But who was saving her? Justine opened the velvet box and stared at the ring. The diamond caught the sunlight and threw tiny rainbows across her palm. She remembered the day Elon proposed. They were at a small restaurant in Palo Alto, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. He'd been so nervous, so awkward in that endearing way he had. "Justine Jennifer Wilson," he'd said, his South African accent still thick back then. "I'm going to change the world, and I want you beside me when I do it." She'd said yes without hesitation. That was the problem with love. It made you believe impossible things. It made you think that passion and vision were enough to sustain a marriage, that shared dreams could survive the reality of grief and distance, and a husband who loved his companies more than he could love her. A tear rolled down Justine's cheek, and she wiped it away angrily. She wasn't going to cry. Not here, not now. She'd done enough crying. The pawn shop's neon sign buzzed and flickered. Cash for gold. How fitting, cash for gold. Money for memories, trading the past for the present. Justine thought about Nevada, her first son, born in 2002. Dead 10 weeks later from sudden infant death syndrome. She'd wanted to grieve together, to hold each other and cry and somehow survive the unsurvivable. But Elon had shut down. He'd gone cold. "I can't just stop working," he'd told her. "The world doesn't stop for personal tragedy." Maybe that was true. Maybe that was how he survived. But Justine had needed him, and he wasn't there. After Nevada died, they tried again. IVF treatments, doctors, hormones, hope and heartbreak in equal measure. Then the twins came and she was grateful. Then the triplets and she was overwhelmed. Through it all, Elon worked and worked and worked. Justine had supported him. She'd believed in his vision of electric cars when everyone said he was crazy. She'd believed in Mars colonization when it sounded like science fiction. She'd stood beside him at launches and product reveals, smiling for cameras, playing the role of the supportive wife. But somewhere along the way, she disappeared. She'd stopped being Justine Wilson, the woman who dreamed of writing fantasy novels, the literature student from Queen's University who'd wanted to create magical worlds with dragons and heroes. She'd become Mrs. Elon Musk, an accessory, a footnote in someone else's biography. And now, after the divorce, she was Elon Musk's ex-wife. Still defined by him, still in his shadow. That's why she needed to sell the ring. Not just for money, though she definitely needed that. Her book deal had fallen through. Her writing career had stalled while she was busy having babies and supporting Elon's dreams. The divorce settlement was fair, but lawyers were expensive and 5 boys needed so much. No, she needed to sell the ring to finally be free, to stop being attached to him, to reclaim her own identity. Justine straightened her shoulders and pushed open the pawn shop door. The bell chimed, a cheerful tinkling sound that seemed wrong for such a sad moment. Inside, the shop smelled like dust and old leather. Glass cases lined the walls, filled with jewelry and electronics and random items people had traded for cash. A guitar hung on the wall, its strings rusty. A wedding dress on a mannequin stood in the corner, yellow with age. Behind the counter sat a middle-aged man with reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up from a magazine and smiled politely. "Help you?" he asked. Justine's throat felt tight. She walked to the counter, each step feeling heavier than the last. This was it, the moment of no return. She placed the velvet box on the glass counter. "I need to sell this," she said quietly. The man picked up the box and opened it. He whistled low. "Nice stone, white gold band." "Platinum," Justine corrected. He pulled out a jeweler's loupe and examined the diamond. "Clean, good clarity, maybe a carat and a half." 1.75, Justine said. She remembered everything about this ring. Elon had been so proud of it. He'd spent months designing it, working with a jeweler, making sure it was perfect. The pawn shop owner set down his loupe. "I can give you 4,000. Justine's stomach dropped. It cost $22,000. The man shrugged. "That's retail, ma'am. I gotta resell it, make a profit. 4,000 cash." $4,000, less than 20% of what Elon had paid, but $4,000 would cover groceries for months, would pay for the boys' swimming lessons, would give her breathing room while she tried to finish her novel. "Can I think about it?" Justine asked. "Sure, but I close in an hour." Justine picked up the box and held it against her chest. 1 hour, 60 minutes to decide whether to erase the last physical symbol of her marriage. She turned to leave, and that's when her phone buzzed in her pocket. The vibration made her jump. She pulled out her phone and looked at the screen. Unknown number. A text message appeared. "Don't do it." Justine's blood turned to ice. Her hands started shaking again. She stared at those 3 words. "Don't do it." Who had sent this? How did they know where she was? What she was doing? Her heart pounded. She looked around the pawn shop, suddenly paranoid. Was someone watching her? Had someone followed her here? The pawn shop owner was back to reading his magazine, oblivious. Justine rushed to the door, bell chiming again as she burst onto Melrose Avenue. The afternoon sun seemed too bright now. The traffic too loud. She looked left and right, searching for familiar faces. Nothing, just strangers going about their day. She looked at her phone again. The message was still there. "Don't do it." Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "Who is this?" The 3 dots appeared, indicating someone was typing. Then they disappeared. No response. Justine waited, standing on the sidewalk outside Bernie's pawn shop, clutching her wedding ring in one hand and her phone in the other. Her mind raced. Could it be Elon? Did he somehow know what she was planning? They barely spoke these days. All communication went through lawyers. He was busy trying to save Tesla from bankruptcy and SpaceX from failure. But he'd always had a way of knowing things. Of appearing when she least expected it. Another buzz, another text from the unknown number. "We need to talk. Patricia, Mr. Musk's office." Justine's legs felt weak. She leaned against the brick wall of the pawn shop. Elon knew. Somehow, impossibly, her ex-husband knew that she was trying to sell her wedding ring, and he was trying to stop her. But why? He'd moved on. He was already dating someone new. She'd seen the photos in tabloids. He had his companies and his dreams and his relentless ambition. Why would he care about a ring? Justine looked down at the velvet box in her hand. Inside, the diamond sparkled innocently. Just a ring. Just a symbol, but nothing with Elon was ever simple. Her phone buzzed again. "Mr. Musk would like to meet. Tomorrow noon, you know where, please come." Justine's mind spun. The same cafe where he proposed. Was he serious? She typed back, "Why?" The response came immediately. "He has something important to tell you. About the ring. Please, Mrs. Musk, it matters." Justine wasn't Mrs. Musk anymore. She'd taken back her maiden name legally. She was Justine Wilson now, or trying to be. But her heart was racing and curiosity was burning through her anger. What could Elon possibly have to say about the ring, about their marriage, about any of it? She looked at the pawn shop behind her. The owner was probably wondering if she'd come back before closing. Then she looked at her phone, at the mysterious messages, at the sudden intrusion of her past into her present. Tomorrow noon, the cafe in Palo Alto where everything had started. Against her better judgment, Justine found herself typing, "I'll be there." She hit send before she could change her mind. The response came fast, "Thank you, he's looking forward to it." Justine put her phone in her pocket and started walking to her car. The velvet box was still in her hand. She hadn't sold it, not yet. As she drove home through Los Angeles traffic, questions swirled in her mind. How did Elon know what she was planning? Why did he care? What could he possibly say that would matter now? And the biggest question of all, why was her heart beating so fast at the thought of seeing him again? Justine couldn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while moonlight filtered through her bedroom curtains. Down the hall, 5 boys slept peacefully, unaware that their mother's mind was spinning with memories she tried so hard to forget. The velvet box sat on her nightstand, closed but impossible to ignore. She kept thinking about that text message, about tomorrow's meeting, about Elon and everything they'd been. Her mind drifted back to where it all began. Queen's University, Ontario, Canada, fall 1989. Justine Wilson had been 20 years old, sitting in the student commons with her nose buried in a fantasy novel. She'd always loved stories about dragons and magic, about ordinary people discovering they were destined for extraordinary things. She wanted to write those stories someday. She wanted to create worlds where anything was possible. That's when she'd first seen him. Elon Musk was a transfer student from South Africa, tall and awkward, with intense eyes that seemed to look right through you. He transferred from Pretoria and then from Queen's sister school. Everyone said he was brilliant but weird. He talked about physics and economics and crazy ideas that made no sense. Justine had noticed him watching her from across the commons. Most guys would look away when caught staring. Elon didn't. He just stood up and walked straight toward her. "You're reading about dragons," he'd said, standing over her table with an ice cream cone dripping in his hand. Justine had looked up, surprised. "Yes." "So?" "I like that. Fantasy is just science we haven't invented yet." He'd sat down without being invited. "I'm Elon. I'm going to colonize Mars someday." Justine had laughed. She thought he was joking. "Mars, really?" "Really? Humans need to become a multiplanetary species. It's the only way to survive long-term." His South African accent made everything sound more serious. "What's your name?" "Justine, and I think you're crazy." He'd smiled then, a rare, genuine smile. "Most people do, but you're still sitting here talking to me." He was right, she was. That was the beginning. Elon had pursued her relentlessly. He'd show up at her dorm with roses. He'd take her to bookstores knowing she loved browsing for hours. He'd talk about his dreams, electric cars, solar power, space travel, changing the entire world. Most people thought he was delusional. Justine found him fascinating. He wasn't like other boys. He didn't play games. He didn't pretend to be cool. He was intense and focused and absolutely certain he would do impossible things. "I don't understand," she told him one night as they walked through campus. "Why Mars? Why electric cars? Why any of it?" Elon had stopped walking and looked at her seriously. "Because someone has to. Because the future won't build itself. Because I can see what's possible and I can't just ignore it." That passion had captivated her. Here was someone who actually believed he could change the world. And when he looked at her, she felt like she could be part of something bigger than herself. They dated through college. Long nights talking about everything: books, science, philosophy, dreams. Elon would explain rocket equations while Justine wrote short stories. They were different but somehow the same. Both dreamers, both believing in impossible things. After graduation, they'd stayed together even as their lives pulled in different directions. Justine moved to Japan to teach English. Elon went to California to start his first company. They'd written letters, actual paper letters, full of longing and hope and promises about the future. Justine turned over in bed, pulling the covers tighter. Those letters were in a box somewhere. She couldn't bring herself to throw them away. Northern California, January 2000. Wedding had been small, just family and close friends at a simple ceremony in Northern California. Justine had worn a cream-colored dress. Elon had worn a suit that didn't quite fit right. He'd never cared much about clothes. But when he'd slipped that platinum ring onto her finger, his hands had been steady. His voice had been clear. "Justine Wilson, you make me believe in magic. Not the dragon kind, the real kind. The kind that says two people can build something extraordinary together." Cried happy tears, hopeful tears. She was 27 years old and she was marrying a man who just sold his first company, Zip2, for over $300 million. But the money hadn't mattered to her. What mattered was the vision, the partnership, the feeling that together they could do anything. Elon's next company, XCOM, was already growing. It would eventually become PayPal. He was working insane hours, but that was okay. Justine was writing, working on her fantasy novels. They were a team, partners in life and dreams. "We're going to change everything," Elon had told her on their wedding night. "Electric cars will replace gas cars. Humans will live on Mars. And you'll write books that millions of people read." She'd believed him about his dreams and hers, but life had other plans. Justine sat up in bed now, unable to lie still with these memories flooding back. She walked to the window and looked out at the Los Angeles skyline. Somewhere out there, Elon was probably awake too, working on some impossible problem. He never slept much. Even when they were married, she'd wake up at 3 in the morning to find his side of the bed empty. He'd be downstairs with his laptop, designing rockets or solving engineering problems. "Don't you ever stop?" she'd asked him once. "Can't, too much to do, not enough time." That had been the pattern of their marriage. Not enough time, never enough time. Nevada Alexander Musk, 2002. Justine's eyes filled with tears as she thought about their first son. Nevada, they'd called him Kal-El at first after Superman's Kryptonian name. Elon had loved that, 10 perfect weeks. 10 weeks of hope and joy and sleepless nights and tiny fingers gripping hers. Then one morning she'd gone to check on him. He'd been so quiet, too quiet, she'd screamed. Elon had come running, the ambulance, the hospital, the doctors saying words like brain death and life support and nothing we can do. SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. No warning, no explanation, no reason, just death, random and cruel. Justine had wanted to fall apart. She'd wanted to scream and cry and rage at the universe. She'd wanted Elon to hold her and grieve with her and somehow make sense of the senseless. But Elon had gone cold, shut down, mechanical. "We can't just stop living," he'd said at the funeral. Nevada wouldn't want that. "We have to keep moving forward." Forward, always forward, never stopping to feel, never stopping to process, just push through the pain and keep working. Justine had tried to understand. Everyone grieves differently. Elon's way was to work, to control what he could control, to solve problems that actually had solutions, but she'd needed him and he wasn't there. Not emotionally, not in the ways that mattered. The distance between them had started then, a crack in their foundation that would only grow wider. The IVF years, 2003-2006. After Nevada, they tried again. Justine had wanted more children. Elon had agreed. But naturally conceiving was difficult, so they turned to IVF, in vitro fertilization, doctors and hormones and clinical procedures. Nothing romantic about it, just science making babies the way Elon made rockets, through careful planning and precise execution. The twins, Griffin and Xavier, were born in 2004, 2 beautiful boys. Justine had been grateful and terrified in equal measure. What if she lost them too? What if SIDS struck again? She'd barely slept those first months, constantly checking on them, making sure they were breathing, making sure they were alive. Elon had been proud of his sons. He'd posed for photos and made announcements. But the late-night feedings, the diaper changes, the endless crying. "I have engineers for Tesla problems," he'd told her. "You're better at the baby stuff." Better at the baby stuff. As if raising humans was just another task to delegate. Then came the triplets in 2006. Kai, Saxon, and Damien. 3 more boys, 3 more mouths to feed and lives to protect. 5 sons total. 5 incredible, exhausting, wonderful boys. Justine had given up on her writing. How could she create fantasy worlds when she could barely keep up with reality? Her novel drafts sat in folders, collecting digital dust. Her dreams of being an author faded into the background noise of motherhood. Meanwhile, Elon's dreams were taking off. Literally. SpaceX was launching rockets. Tesla was building electric cars. He was on magazine covers and giving TED Talks. The world was starting to see what Justine had always known, that Elon Musk was going to change everything. But she was disappearing, becoming invisible, just Elon's wife. The woman behind the billionaire, the mother of his children. She tried to talk to him about it. "I need to be more than just mom. I need to be Justine too." "You are Justine," he'd said, distracted by his phone. "Nothing's changed." Everything had changed. The end, 2008. The divorce had been brutal, not because Elon fought it, he didn't. He'd agreed almost immediately. "If you're not happy, we shouldn't stay married," he'd said, practical as always. "The boys will be fine. We'll work out custody." That practicality had broken her heart. No fight, no begging her to stay, no grand gesture, just acceptance. Like she was a business deal that wasn't working out. The lawyers had handled everything. Division of assets, custody arrangements, alimony, child support, everything clean and legal and cold. The divorce was finalized in September 2008. 8 years of marriage over. Justine had moved out of their mansion into a smaller house. She'd started trying to write again. Started trying to figure out who Justine Wilson was when she wasn't Mrs. Elon Musk, but the world wouldn't let her forget. Every article about Elon mentioned her. Elon Musk and his ex-wife Justine share custody of 5 sons. Billionaire Elon Musk divorced from Justine Wilson Musk. Always defined by him, always in his shadow. That's why selling the ring felt so important. It was a symbol, a way of finally letting go, a way of saying, I existed before you and I'll exist after you. Justine looked at the clock. 3 in the morning, she needed to sleep. Tomorrow, no, today, now she'd be meeting Elon at noon. She climbed back into bed and closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept spinning with questions. Why did he want to see her? What could he possibly say about the ring, about their marriage, about any of it? And why, despite everything, did part of her still care what he thought? She hated that part of herself, the part that remembered loving him, the part that remembered believing in their future together. Finally, as dawn broke over Los Angeles, Justine fell into a restless sleep. She dreamed of dragons and rockets and a platinum ring that weighed more than it should. Justine woke to the sound of her alarm at 7 o'clock. Her head ached from lack of sleep. Her eyes felt swollen from the tears she'd cried in the darkness. For a moment, she'd forgotten about the meeting. Then it all came rushing back. Noon, Palo Alto, the cafe where Elon had proposed. She groaned and pulled the pillow over her face. What was she doing? Why had she agreed to this? Down the hall, she heard small feet running. Then her bedroom door burst open. Mommy, Mommy, Saxon took my truck. Kai stood in the doorway, his hair sticking up in all directions. Justine sat up and tried to smile. It's okay, buddy, we'll find it. Let Mommy wake up first. But there was no waking up slowly with 5 boys under 4 years old. Within minutes, all of them were awake. Griffin and Vivian wanted breakfast. The triplets were fighting over toys. The house erupted into chaos. Justine moved through the morning on autopilot. Cereal bowls, juice cups, wiping faces, breaking up arguments. This was her life now. Constant motion, constant noise, constant need. She loved her boys. She loved them more than anything. But sometimes she missed silence. She missed being able to think her own thoughts. At 9 o'clock, her phone rang. Unknown number again. Justine's stomach tightened. She stepped into the kitchen and answered. Hello. Mrs. Musk, this is Patricia Chen from Mr. Musk's executive office. The voice was professional, female, kind. It's just Justine now, Justine said quietly. I took back my maiden name. Of course, I apologize, Ms. Wilson. Patricia paused. I'm calling to confirm your meeting with Mr. Musk today at noon. How did you know I was at that pawn shop yesterday? Justine asked. The question had been burning in her mind all night. Patricia hesitated. Mr. Musk asked me to monitor your social media accounts. For security purposes, you understand. You and the boys are still family. Justine felt her face flush with anger. He's spying on me. Not spying, monitoring. There's a difference. Patricia's voice remained calm. You posted on your blog yesterday morning. Something about letting go of the past and moving forward. Mr. Musk read it and became concerned. Justine remembered the post. She'd written it at dawn, unable to sleep. Just a few paragraphs about change and closure and finding yourself again. She hadn't mentioned the ring specifically, but Elon had figured it out. Of course he had. He was brilliant at reading between lines, at seeing patterns others missed. That was private, Justine said. Your blog is public, Ms. Wilson. Anyone can read it. Justine wanted to argue, but Patricia was right. She'd made the blog public. She'd wanted the world to see that she was more than Elon Musk's ex-wife, that she had her own thoughts and voice. Why does he care? Justine asked. We're divorced. My life is my own now. Patricia's voice softened. I can't speak for Mr. Musk's motivations, but I can tell you that he requested this meeting personally. He canceled 3 conference calls to make time for it. Whatever he wants to discuss, it matters to him. 3 canceled conference calls. That was significant. Elon never canceled work for personal reasons. Fine, Justine said. I'll be there at noon. Thank you, and Ms. Wilson, he asked me to tell you something. What? He said to tell you that he remembers everything. He said you'd understand what that means. Justine's breath caught. She did understand. During their marriage, Elon's memory had been extraordinary. He could remember every conversation, every detail, every moment. It was both amazing and exhausting. You couldn't win an argument with someone who remembered exactly what you'd said 3 years ago. If Elon remembered everything, that meant he remembered the good times, the love, the dreams they'd shared, not just the ending. "Okay," Justine whispered. "Thank you, Patricia." After hanging up, Justine stood in her kitchen surrounded by breakfast dishes and toy cars. Her boys were in the living room watching cartoons. For a moment, she could breathe. She picked up the velvet box from where she'd left it on the counter. Opening it, she stared at the ring again. This ring had traveled with her through 8 years of marriage. It had been on her finger when Nevada was born, when he died, when the twins came, when the triplets arrived. Through every launch, every product reveal, every moment of Elon's rising fame. What could he possibly want to say about it now? Justine closed the box and went to get ready for the meeting. At 11 o'clock, Elon's nanny arrived. Her name was Maria, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been helping with the boys since the triplets were born. Elon paid for her, part of the custody arrangement. "You look nice," Maria said as Justine came downstairs in a simple blue dress. "It's just a meeting," Justine replied, but her hands were shaking as she grabbed her purse. The drive from Los Angeles to Palo Alto took over 5 hours, but Justine had given herself extra time. She needed the drive to clear her head, to prepare herself for seeing Elon again. They'd only seen each other a few times since the divorce. Brief exchanges when dropping off or picking up the boys. Awkward conversations about schedules and doctor's appointments. Nothing personal, nothing real. This would be different. As she drove north on the 101, Justine thought about what she wanted to say. She'd practiced speeches in her head. Angry speeches about being monitored, hurt speeches about being abandoned, defiant speeches about moving on. But now, driving toward him, all those speeches felt hollow. The truth was more complicated than anger. Yes, Elon had hurt her. Yes, he'd been absent and cold and impossible. But he'd also been the man she'd loved, the father of her children. The person who'd believed in her writing when no one else did. People weren't villains or heroes. They were just people, flawed and complicated and trying their best. Even Elon. Justine arrived in Palo Alto at 11:45. She parked a block away from the cafe and sat in her car, gathering courage. The cafe looked exactly the same. Same blue awning, same outdoor tables, same menu board in the window. It was like stepping into a time machine. At exactly noon, Justine walked through the door. The smell hit her first, coffee and fresh bread and something sweet baking in the back. The same smells from 2000, from the day Elon had proposed. She scanned the cafe and found him immediately. Elon sat at a corner table, his back to the wall. He wore a black t-shirt and jeans. His hair was messy. He looked exhausted with dark circles under his eyes that matched her own. When he saw her, he stood up, awkward, uncertain. "Justine, thank you for coming." She walked to the table and sat down across from him. Up close, he looked even more tired, thinner than she remembered. The stress of running 2 companies during a financial crisis was clearly taking its toll. "You said you wanted to talk about the ring," Justine said, keeping her voice steady. "I do, but first, can I get you something? Coffee? Tea?" "Herbal tea, chamomile." Elon went to the counter and ordered. Justine watched him interact with the barista. He was polite but distracted, his mind clearly elsewhere. That was Elon, always thinking about 3 things at once. He returned with her tea and a black coffee for himself. He sat down and stared at his cup, not drinking. "You don't have to sell it," he said finally. Justine felt her defenses rise. "That's my decision." "I know, I'm not trying to control you." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "I just want you to understand what you're selling." "I know what I'm selling. It's a ring, a symbol of a marriage that ended." "It's more than that." Elon leaned forward. "It's proof that we existed, that what we had was real." Justine's throat tightened. "What we had is over, Elon." "The marriage is over, but the history isn't. The boys aren't." He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "I'm saying this badly. I'm not good at this." "At what?" "At feelings, at emotional conversations, at any of this." He gestured vaguely. "You always knew that. It's why we failed." "We failed because you chose work over family," Justine said, old wounds opening. "Because when Nevada died, you ran away instead of grieving with me." Elon flinched. She'd hit a nerve. "You're right," he said quietly. "I did run. I didn't know how to process that kind of pain, so I worked. It was wrong. I was wrong." Justine stared at him. In 8 years of marriage, Elon had rarely admitted being wrong about anything. "After Nevada died, something broke inside me," Elon continued. I couldn't fix it. I can fix rockets. I can fix cars. I can solve engineering problems. But grief, loss, I had no equation for that. I needed you, Justine whispered. I needed my husband. I know, and I failed you. I failed us. He finally took a sip of his coffee. Work was easier. Work made sense. I could control outcomes, set goals, measure success. With grief, there was no control, no solution, just pain. Justine felt tears forming. She wanted to hear this 8 years ago, 5 years ago, even 1 year ago, but now, what difference did it make? Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you deserve to know, because I never said it when we were married. Elon looked at her with those intense eyes that had first captivated her at Queen's University. And because I don't want you to sell that ring thinking our marriage was a mistake. It wasn't. It ended. Endings don't erase beginnings. We had something real, Justine. We created 5 incredible boys. We supported each other's dreams. We loved each other. Past tense, Justine said. Loved past. Yes, past, but important past. History that matters. Elon pulled an envelope from his pocket. I wrote you something. The night you moved out, I never sent it. He slid the envelope across the table. Justine's name was written on the front in his distinctive handwriting. Why didn't you send it? She asked. Because I'm a coward. Because I thought moving forward meant leaving the past behind. He stood up. Read it later, not here, but read it before you sell the ring. That's all I ask. Justine picked up the envelope. It was worn like he'd carried it around for months. There's no pressure, Elon said. No strings. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But make the decision with all the information, with the full story. He started to walk away, then turned back. I know I can't make up for the past. I know I hurt you, but I want you to know something. He paused. You're the strongest person I've ever met, stronger than any rocket fuel, more brilliant than any engineer I've hired. And the world needs to know your name not as my ex-wife, but as Justine Wilson, author, mother, survivor. Then he left, walking out of the cafe without looking back. Justine sat alone at the table, holding the envelope, her tea growing cold. Justine sat frozen at the table, staring at the envelope in her hands. Around her, the cafe hummed with normal life. Students typing on laptops, couples sharing pastries, people laughing and talking about ordinary things. But nothing felt ordinary to Justine right now. Her name on the envelope was written in Elon's careful handwriting. She traced the letters with her finger. Part of her wanted to rip it open immediately. Part of her wanted to burn it without reading. Instead, she tucked it carefully into her purse and left the cafe. Outside, the Palo Alto sun felt too bright. Justine walked to her car in a daze. Her mind kept replaying what Elon had said. You're the strongest person I've ever met. When had he started thinking that? During their marriage, she'd felt weak, invisible, like she was drowning while he conquered the world. Justine sat in her car and pulled out the envelope again. Her hands trembled as she turned it over. It wasn't sealed, just tucked closed. She could read it right now, right here in this parking lot, but something stopped her. This felt too important to rush, too significant to read in a car outside a cafe where strangers might see her cry, because she knew she would cry. Justine started the engine and began the long drive back to Los Angeles, but she only made it 20 minutes before she had to pull over. Her hands were shaking too hard to drive safely. Her vision was blurring with tears. She pulled into a rest stop off Highway 101 and parked under a tree. Okay, she whispered to herself. Okay, just read it. She opened the envelope and pulled out several pages of paper. The handwriting was Elon's, neat, precise, engineer's handwriting. The date at the top said September 13, 2008, 2 days after their divorce was finalized. Justine took a deep breath and began to read. Dear Justine, by the time you read this, if you ever do, you'll have moved out. The house feels empty, not because you took furniture, but because you took life with you. I'm writing this at 3 a.m. because I can't sleep. I should be working on the Falcon 1 launch problems or Tesla's production delays, but all I can think about is how badly I failed you. I need you to know something I've never been able to say to your face. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for choosing work over you again and again. I'm sorry for not grieving Nevada with you the way you needed. I'm sorry for making you feel invisible when you were the most visible thing in my life. When Nevada died, something broke inside me. You wanted me to sit with you in the pain, to cry together, to somehow process the impossible fact that our son was gone. I couldn't do it. Every time I looked at you, I saw the grief in your eyes and it terrified me, because I felt it too. This huge, crushing weight that made it hard to breathe. And I didn't know what to do with it, so I ran. I worked 18-hour days. I threw myself into problems that had solutions. Rocket equations, battery technology, things I could actually fix. You were right to be angry. You needed a husband, and I gave you an absent workaholic. I tell myself I was building our future, building something for our family. But the truth is simpler and more pathetic. I was running away from pain I didn't know how to handle. Justine stopped reading. Tears were streaming down her face. She wanted to hear this so badly during their marriage, this acknowledgement, this honesty. Why couldn't he have said it when it mattered? She kept reading. The twins came and I was proud. The triplets came and I was overwhelmed. 5 boys, 5 incredible, exhausting, wonderful boys. You handled everything, doctor's appointments, feedings, school preparations. You were the foundation our family was built on, and I took that for granted. I thought being a good provider meant making money, building companies, securing our financial future. I didn't understand that being present matters more than being successful. Or maybe I understood but couldn't do it, because sitting still with emotions is harder for me than launching rockets. At least with rockets, I know what to do. You gave me everything, Justine. You supported my crazy dreams when everyone said I was insane. You believed in electric cars when people laughed. You believed in Mars when it sounded like science fiction. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And how did I repay you? By working, by being absent, by letting you disappear into the role of Elon Musk's wife when you were always so much more than that. You're Justine Wilson, fantasy author, creative mind, brilliant writer, mother of 5, survivor of grief that would break most people. You existed before me. You'll exist after me. And I'm sorry I made you forget that. Justine's hands were shaking so hard the paper rustled. She set the letter down and pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the tears. This was everything she'd wanted him to understand. Everything she tried to explain during countless arguments and therapy sessions and tearful late-night conversations. He'd understood. He just understood too late. She picked up the letter again. I know our marriage is over. I know you need to find yourself again, not as my wife, but as Justine. I understand that. I even respect it. But I want you to know something. You're the strongest person I've ever met. When Nevada died, you felt everything, the full weight of that loss, and you survived it. You got up the next day and kept going. When we had the twins through IVF, you went through every painful procedure without complaint. When the triplets came, you handled 3 babies at once with more grace than I've handled one company. You're stronger than any rocket fuel. More resilient than any material we use at SpaceX, and I failed to see that when we were together. I see it now. Our marriage ended, but our story doesn't have to. The boys need you. More importantly, they need to see you shine. To see you be Justine Wilson, not just mom, not just my ex-wife. Whatever you do next, writing, creating, building your own dreams, I want to support it. Not as your husband, not even as your friend right now, because I know that's too complicated. But as the father of your children, as someone who owes you more than I can ever repay. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it yet. Maybe I never will. I'm just asking you to remember something. You existed before me. You matter beyond me. And the world needs to know your name, not as my ex-wife. As you. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. If you need to sell that ring to move forward, I understand. It's yours, your choice. But before you do, I want you to know it represents something real. 8 years of marriage, 5 beautiful boys, dreams we shared even if they didn't turn out the way we planned. That ring is proof you existed, proof we existed, proof that before I was the CEO of Tesla or SpaceX, I was just Elon, and you were Justine, and we loved each other. That's worth remembering, even if everything else fell apart. I hope someday you can forgive me, not for my sake, but for yours. Because you deserve peace, and I hope someday you achieve everything you dreamed of. The novels, the recognition, the life where you're not defined by anyone but yourself. When that happens, I'll be the first one celebrating, not because I helped, but because you did it despite me. Thank you for 8 years. Thank you for 5 sons. Thank you for believing in my dreams even when I failed to believe in yours. You deserved better. I'm sorry I wasn't it. Elon. Justine finished reading and sat in silence. Cars rushed past on the highway. Birds sang in the tree above her. Normal life continued around her, but she felt like the world had shifted. This letter changed everything. Not because it made their marriage okay, not because it erased the hurt, but because it showed her that Elon had seen her, even if he couldn't show it at the time, even if he'd realized it too late. He'd seen her strength, her sacrifice, her dreams. And he'd understood what she'd been trying to say all along, that she needed to be more than his wife, more than the mother of his children. She needed to be Justine. Justine wiped her eyes and carefully folded the letter. She put it back in the envelope and held it against her chest. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "Boys asking when you'll be home. Everything okay?" Justine smiled through her tears. Her boys, her 5 incredible, exhausting, wonderful boys. They were her greatest achievement. Not Elon's empire, not his billions, these 5 lives. She texted back, "On my way, be home for dinner, love you all." Then she looked at the velvet box in her purse. The ring inside it suddenly felt different, heavier, more meaningful. This wasn't just a ring anymore. It was proof of everything she'd survived, every challenge she'd faced, every moment she'd been strong when she felt weak. Elon was right. Selling it wouldn't erase the past. It would just erase the proof that she'd lived through it. And Justine Wilson was a survivor. She started the car and pulled back onto the highway. But instead of heading straight home, she took a detour, back to Melrose Avenue, back to Bernie's pawn shop. The same man with reading glasses looked up when she entered. "You came back, ready to sell." Justine walked to the counter and placed the velvet box down. The man reached for it. "Actually, no," Justine said, picking the box back up. "I changed my mind. I'm keeping it." The man shrugged. "Suit yourself." Justine walked out of the pawn shop feeling lighter than she had in months. The ring was in her purse. The letter was in her purse. And for the first time since the divorce, she felt like herself again. Not Elon's ex-wife. Not just mom, Justine Wilson, author, mother, survivor. She drove home to her boys, the Los Angeles sunset painting the sky orange and pink. And for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Not hope for reconciliation with Elon. That ship had sailed. But hope for herself. For her writing, for her future. The ring would stay with her, not on her finger, but safe, protected. A reminder of everything she'd been through and everything she'd survived. And tomorrow she'd start writing again, her story, her way, because the world needed to know her name. Justine pulled into her driveway just as the sun was setting. The house lights were on, warm and welcoming. Through the window she could see Maria moving around the kitchen, probably making dinner. Her boys were home. Her life was here. She sat in the car for a moment, holding the envelope. Reading it once wasn't enough. She needed to read it again. To make sure she hadn't imagined Elon's words, to let them sink in completely. Maria appeared at the front door with Saxon on her hip. She waved. Justine waved back and tucked the letter into her purse. Later, she'd read it again later. "Mommy," the boys rushed to greet her as she walked through the door. Griffin grabbed her leg. Vivian showed her a drawing. The triplets all talked at once about their day. Justine knelt down and hugged them all, breathing in their little boy smell of shampoo and juice boxes and pure innocence. These were Elon's sons too. They had his intense eyes, his curiosity, his determination, but they also had her creativity, her gentleness, her ability to feel deeply. They were proof that she and Elon had created something beautiful together, even if the marriage itself had fallen apart. "Did you have a good day?" Maria asked, giving Justine a knowing look. "Yes," Justine said softly. "A confusing day, but good." After Maria left and the boys were in bed, Justine finally had time to herself. She made chamomile tea and sat at her desk, the one place in the house that was entirely hers. Her laptop sat closed. Her notebook sat empty. She'd barely written anything in months. The blog post from yesterday had been the first words she'd written in weeks. But tonight something felt different, like a door had opened inside her chest. Justine pulled out Elon's letter and read it again, slowly this time. Letting each word settle. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." Was she? She'd never felt strong. During their marriage, she'd felt weak, dependent, lost, but maybe strength wasn't about never feeling weak. Maybe it was about surviving the weakness, getting up anyway, keeping going. She'd survived Nevada's death. She'd survived 5 pregnancies. She'd survived the loneliness of being married to someone who was never truly present. She'd survived the divorce, and she was still here, still standing, still fighting for herself. That was strength. Justine opened her laptop and created a new document. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. What did she want to say? What story did she need to tell? She started typing. "I was a starter wife. That's what they call women like me. The ones who marry ambitious men before they become successful. The ones who support the dream, then get left behind when the dream comes true. I married Elon Musk in January 2000. He just sold his first company for millions. I was a struggling writer with dreams of publishing fantasy novels. We were young, in love, convinced we could change the world together. 8 years later, we were divorced. He was a billionaire CEO. I was a single mother of 5 trying to remember who I was before I became Mrs. Musk. This is my story, not his, mine. Justine stopped typing and stared at the words. Her heart was pounding. This was it. This was the story she needed to tell. Not fantasy dragons, not made-up worlds, but reality, her reality. The world knew Elon's version, the brilliant entrepreneur, the visionary changing transportation and space exploration. The man who would colonize Mars, but nobody knew her version. The woman who'd stood beside him, who'd buried a child with him, who disappeared into his shadow. It was time to step into the light. Justine kept writing. The words poured out like water from a broken dam. Everything she'd held inside for years, the grief, the anger, the love, the loss. She wrote about meeting Elon at Queen's University, about falling for his intensity and vision, about the wedding and the ring and the dreams they'd shared. She wrote about Nevada, about holding her dying son, about begging Elon to grieve with her, about his cold response, "We have to keep moving forward." She wrote about the IVF treatments, the twins, the triplets, 5 boys in 4 years, the exhaustion, the joy, the overwhelming sense of drowning while everyone congratulated her on her perfect life. She wrote about becoming invisible, about watching Elon's companies grow while her writing dreams shrank, about the moment she realized she'd lost herself completely. And she wrote about the divorce, about reclaiming her maiden name, about trying to figure out who Justine Wilson was when she wasn't defined by being someone's wife. Hours passed. Justine didn't notice. She was lost in the story, her story. When she finally stopped, it was 2 in the morning. She'd written over 3,000 words. Raw, honest, painful, real. She read through what she'd written, tears streaming down her face. This wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect, but it was true, and truth mattered more than perfection. Justine saved the document and titled it, "I Was a Starter Wife, Inside My Marriage to Elon Musk." Then she did something terrifying. She opened her blog and began formatting the piece to publish. Her finger hovered over the publish button. If she did this, there was no taking it back. The world would know everything. Her pain, her struggles, her version of events. Elon might be angry, his lawyers might call, people might judge her, but people were already judging her. They were already defining her by her relationship to Elon. This was her chance to define herself. Justine thought about the letter. About Elon's words, "The world needs to know your name, not as my ex-wife, as you." She clicked publish. The piece went live at 2:47 a.m. on a Wednesday morning in April 2008. Justine closed her laptop and went to bed. She felt exhausted but lighter, like she'd been carrying a heavy weight and finally set it down. When Justine woke up at 7, her phone was exploding with notifications. Her blog post had gone viral. Messages flooded her inbox. Her blog traffic had crashed from too many visitors. News outlets were requesting interviews. Women were sharing the post on social media with comments like, "This is my story too." And finally, someone said it. Justine sat up in bed, scrolling through hundreds of comments. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell your truth. I was also a starter wife. This made me cry. You're not invisible anymore. We see you. Your strength is inspiring." Her hands shook as she read. She'd expected backlash, criticism, people telling her she was bitter or ungrateful. Instead, she found solidarity, understanding. Thousands of women thanking her for putting words to their own experiences. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Justine answered hesitantly. "Hello. Ms. Wilson, this is Amanda Chen from Marie Claire magazine. We'd love to run an excerpt of your blog post in our next issue and do a full interview." Justine's mouth fell open. Marie Claire, one of the biggest women's magazines in the country. Yes, I'd be interested. More calls came, more interview requests, book agents reaching out, publishing houses expressing interest. By noon, Justine's blog post had been shared over 50,000 times. By evening, it was over 100,000. The world was listening. And for the first time since the divorce, Justine felt seen. 3 days later, Elon called. Justine saw his name on her phone screen and her stomach dropped. She'd been expecting this, dreading it. She answered, "Elon. "I read your blog post," he said. "No greeting, straight to business as always. And," Justine braced herself for anger, "you were right about everything." His voice was quiet, tired. "I was absent, I was cold, I failed you." Justine didn't know what to say. "The part about Nevada," Elon paused. "I should have grieved with you, I know that now. I've always known it. I was just too much of a coward to admit it." "Elon." "No, let me finish." He took a deep breath. "Your post is good, it's honest. It's painful to read, but it should be. I earned that pain." Justine felt tears forming. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." "I know you were trying to find yourself. That's what you said in the letter I wrote, that you needed to be more than my ex-wife." He paused. "Mission accomplished. Everyone's talking about Justine Wilson now." There was no bitterness in his voice, just acknowledgement, maybe even pride. "Are you angry?" Justine asked. "No, I'm impressed. You did what I couldn't do. You told the truth about failure, about being human." Elon laughed softly. "My PR team is having a heart attack, but I told them to leave it alone. This is your story to tell." Justine wiped her eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This is all you, your courage, your voice." He paused. "I meant what I said in that letter. The world needs to know your name. Looks like they're learning it now." After they hung up, Justine sat in silence. She'd expected anger, defensiveness, legal threats. Instead, she'd gotten support, acknowledgement, space to tell her story. Maybe Elon really had changed, or maybe he'd always understood but couldn't express it until it was too late. Either way, something had shifted between them. Not reconciliation, but respect, recognition. They would never be married again, but maybe they could be something else. Co-parents who actually communicated. Former partners who honored what they'd shared. Maybe that was enough. Over the next few weeks, Justine's life transformed. Her blog post was picked up by major news outlets. Marie Claire published an expanded version. Publishers were offering book deals for her memoir. Women's groups invited her to speak. Domestic violence organizations asked her to share her story. Single mothers reached out to thank her for giving them a voice. Justine Wilson was no longer just Elon Musk's ex-wife. She was Justine Wilson, author, advocate, voice for women who'd lost themselves in their marriages. She'd found her purpose, not in fantasy novels about dragons, but in real stories about real women surviving real challenges. The velvet box sat on her desk as she wrote. She'd taken the ring out and placed it beside her laptop, not to wear, just to see. A reminder of where she'd been, what she'd survived, who she'd become. The ring wasn't a symbol of failure anymore. It was a symbol of survival. Justine Wilson was a survivor. She opened her laptop and continued writing. Her memoir, her truth, her name. The world was finally listening, and she had so much more to say. 2 weeks after Justine's blog post went viral, a package arrived at her house. It was a Tuesday morning and the boys were at preschool. Justine was alone, working on her memoir at the kitchen table. The doorbell rang. A delivery driver stood on her porch with a small box. "Justine Wilson?" he asked. "That's me." He handed her the package and left. Justine looked at the return address, SpaceX headquarters, Hawthorne, California. Her heart skipped a beat. Elon. She carried the box inside and set it on the table. It was light, maybe 6 inches square. Plain brown cardboard with her name written in black marker. Justine hesitated. Part of her didn't want to open it. Their phone conversation had been good, supportive. She didn't want anything to ruin that fragile peace between them. But curiosity won. She carefully opened the box. Inside was bubble wrap. Underneath that, a smaller box. And inside that box was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Justine picked up the note. Elon's handwriting again, but rushed this time. Scribbled quickly. "Justine. This is for the boys. And for you, watch it when you're ready. No pressure, no expectations. E." That was it. No explanation, just instructions. Justine turned the USB drive over in her hands. It was plain black, unmarked except for a small piece of tape with private written on it. What could be on here? A video, documents, another letter. She plugged the drive into her laptop. One file appeared, for our son's MP4. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. Did she really want to see this? What if it was painful? What if it made everything complicated again? But the note said it was for the boys too. She needed to know what it was before showing them. Justine clicked the file. The video opened with Elon sitting at his desk at SpaceX. She recognized the office from photos. Industrial, minimalist, with rocket parts and engineering diagrams on the walls behind him. Photos of their family sat on his desk. She could see one from their wedding day. Elon looked directly at the camera. He looked exhausted, like he'd been up for days, but his eyes were clear, focused. He began to speak. Griffin, Vivian, Kai, Saxon, Damien, if you're watching this, you're old enough to understand that parents are just people. Imperfect, flawed people who try their best and sometimes fail. Justine's breath caught. This was for her sons, a message they'd see someday when they were older. I failed your mother in many ways, Elon continued. I failed to be present. I failed to be emotionally available. I failed to be the partner she deserved. And I want you to know something about her that the world is just starting to see. He paused, looking down at his hands, then back at the camera. Your mother is a warrior. When your brother Nevada died, I ran away from the pain. She faced it head-on. She wanted to grieve. She wanted to process. She wanted to feel everything, even when it hurt beyond measure. Justine's eyes filled with tears. She'd never heard Elon talk about Nevada like this. He'd always avoided the subject. I was wrong to run, Elon said. She was right to feel. She understood something I didn't, that grief is the price we pay for love. And she loved Nevada enough to pay that price fully. He stood up and walked to the window. The camera followed him. Outside, she could see rocket parts and SpaceX workers moving around. She carried you twins and triplets, knowing the risks, knowing the fear of losing another child. She did it anyway because she wanted you in this world. She's the reason you exist. Never forget that. Elon turned back to the camera. When our marriage ended, she could have been bitter. She could have poisoned your relationship with me. She could have told you I was a monster who chose work over family. She didn't. She's protected my relationship with you even when I didn't deserve it. Justine wiped her eyes. This was true. She'd never badmouthed Elon to the boys, never made them choose sides. Even when she was angry, even when she was hurt, she'd made sure they knew their father loved them. Your mother recently wrote something brave, Elon continued. She told the truth about our marriage, about how I failed her, about how she lost herself. Some people think she was attacking me. She wasn't. She was finding herself. And that's the most important thing anyone can do. He sat back down at his desk and looked directly into the camera with those intense eyes. This video is my promise to you and to her. I'm creating a fund, $2 million for your mother's writing career, for her dreams, so she never has to sell anything precious again, not rings, not dreams, not herself. Justine gasped, $2 million for her. She won't know about this fund until you watch this video, Elon said. I'm not doing it for credit or reconciliation. I'm doing it because it's right, because she sacrificed her dreams to support mine, because she deserves to achieve everything she ever wanted. He leaned forward, elbows on his desk. Your mother taught me something crucial. Success isn't just about rockets and cars and changing the world. It's about human connections. It's about showing up. It's about being present with the people you love. Elon smiled sadly. I'm still learning that lesson. I'll probably fail at it again, but I'll keep trying because of you five. Because you deserve a father who's actually there, not just a name on a trust fund. He picked up a photo from his desk, their wedding photo. I keep this here to remind me of something important. Before I was the CEO of Tesla or SpaceX, I was just Elon. And your mother was Justine. Two people who loved each other and believed impossible things were possible. He set the photo down carefully. We proved that impossible things can happen. We built 2 companies that people said would fail. We had 5 incredible sons through tremendous medical challenges. We survived unimaginable grief. We did impossible things together. Elon looked back at the camera one more time. The marriage ended, but the respect doesn't have to. The love for you 5 doesn't have to. And the acknowledgement of everything your mother gave up for this family that never ends. He stood up, preparing to end the recording. I love you all. Be good to your mother. She's the strongest person in this family. And someday when you read her books and see her success, remember, she did it herself. She didn't need me. She never did. She was always enough. The video ended. Justine sat staring at the blank screen, tears streaming down her face. Her hands were shaking, her heart was pounding. $2 million for her writing, for her dreams, but more than that, the acknowledgement, the respect. The way he talked about her to their sons, she wasn't invisible anymore, not to the world after her blog post, and not to Elon. He'd finally seen her, really seen her. There was a knock at the door. Justine wiped her eyes and went to answer it. A woman in a professional suit stood on the porch with a briefcase. Justine Wilson. Yes. I'm Catherine Brennan from Musk Family Trust Legal Services. Mr. Musk asked me to deliver these documents to you personally. She handed Justine a thick envelope. This is the paperwork for your trust fund. $2 million to be managed independently. No strings attached. You can access it whenever you need for your writing career, workshops, publishing, living expenses, whatever helps you achieve your goals. Justine took the envelope in shock. This is real. Catherine smiled. Very real. Mr. Musk established it last week. He wanted to make sure everything was in place before you received the video. She pulled out a business card. I'll be managing the fund. Call me anytime with questions. Congratulations, Ms. Wilson. Not every day someone gets this kind of support for their dreams. After Catherine left, Justine stood in her living room holding the envelope and the USB drive. Her whole body was trembling. This wasn't about the money. $2 million was life-changing, yes, but the real gift was what the money represented. Elon was saying, I see you, I value you, I support you, not as my wife, not as the mother of my children, but as Justine Wilson, artist and dreamer in your own right. He was giving her what she'd begged for during their marriage, recognition. Acknowledgement, the space to be herself, but he was giving it now after the divorce when it was too late to save them. Why couldn't he have done this when they were married? Why couldn't he have seen her then? Justine's phone rang. Elon's name appeared on the screen. She answered. I got your package. And his voice was quiet, uncertain. $2 million, Elon, that's not enough, I know, but it's a start for your writing, for your independence. He paused. You're not obligated to thank me. You don't owe me anything. This is my apology for not supporting your dreams when we were married. Justine sat down on the couch. Why now? Why not 5 years ago or 8 years ago? Because I was an idiot 5 years ago, and 8 years ago I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. Elon sighed. Your blog post opened my eyes, reading about our marriage from your perspective. I finally understood what you'd been trying to tell me all along. That I needed to be more than your wife. Yes, that you were a whole person with your own dreams and I'd made you invisible. His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry, Justine, I'm so sorry. They sat in silence on the phone, not awkward silence, just space, room for everything they'd been through to exist between them. I never sold the ring, Justine said finally. I know. Hell, Patricia has a contact at the pawn shop. He told her you came back and changed your mind. Elon laughed softly. I was relieved, not because I wanted you to keep it for my sake, but because I wanted you to keep it for yours, as proof of what you survived. That's exactly why I kept it, Justine whispered. Good, you deserve to remember your own strength. Justine looked at the envelope of legal documents. What if I had sold it? What would you have done? Elon was quiet for a moment. I was going to buy it back, through a third party so you wouldn't know, and then I was going to return it to you with a note. This belongs to you, your past, your choice. You were going to give it back. Of course, it was never about controlling your decision. It was about making sure you knew the decision was yours to make, that you had the power. He paused. I spent our marriage taking your power away. I wanted to give it back. Justine felt fresh tears forming. This was the Elon she'd fallen in love with at Queen's University, the one who saw her as an equal, a partner, not an accessory to his success. Thank you, she said, for the video, for the fund, for finally understanding. Thank you for being patient enough to let me understand, even after everything. After they hung up, Justine opened the legal documents. Everything was legitimate. $2 million available whenever she needed it. No strings, no conditions, just support for her dreams. She thought about what she'd do with it. Hire an editor for her memoir, take writing workshops, maybe even go back to school for her MFA. The possibilities stretched out before her like an open road. But more than the money, she had something else now, closure. Not the closure of forgetting, but the closure of being seen, being acknowledged, being valued for who she was, not just what role she played in someone else's life. Justine walked to her desk and opened her laptop. She had a memoir to finish, a story to tell, and now she had all the support she needed to tell it right. The velvet box with the ring sat beside her computer. She opened it and looked at the diamond one more time. It caught the afternoon light and threw rainbows across her desk. This ring had traveled through 8 years of marriage, through grief and joy and failure and survival. It had been on her finger when she was Mrs. Elon Musk, and it was still with her now that she was Justine Wilson again. But it didn't define her anymore. It was just part of her story, one chapter in a much longer book. And Justine Wilson was just getting started writing that book. She closed the ring box and set it aside. Then she opened her memoir document and kept writing. The world was listening. Her sons would someday watch that video and understand, and she had the resources to achieve every dream she put aside. The future stretched out before her, full of possibility. And for the first time since the divorce, Justine felt complete, not because of money, not because of Elon's acknowledgement, but because she'd found herself again. She'd reclaimed her voice. She'd stepped out of the shadow and into the light. She was Justine Wilson, author, mother, survivor, dreamer. And her story was just beginning. Los Angeles, California, present day, 2024. Justine Wilson sat in her home office, 16 years older than the woman who'd stood outside that pawn shop in 2008. Her hair had threads of silver now. Her face showed lines around her eyes, laugh lines, her sons said, evidence of a life fully lived. On her desk sat 3 published novels, not the fantasy books about dragons she dreamed of writing in college, but something more important, memoirs and essays about identity, survival, and finding yourself after loss. Her first book, I Was a Starter Wife, had become a bestseller in 2010. It had been featured on Oprah, turned into a documentary, taught in women's studies classes across the country. Thousands of women had written to thank her for giving voice to their experiences, for showing them they weren't alone, for proving that you could lose yourself in a marriage and still find your way back. The velvet box still sat on her desk, though she'd moved houses 3 times since 2008. She opened it occasionally, looked at the ring, and remembered, not with bitterness anymore, just with acknowledgement of everything that had been. Her phone buzzed, a text from Griffin. Mom, finished my first year at Stanford. Coming home tomorrow, can't wait to see you. Justine smiled. Her boys were grown now. Griffin was 20, studying computer science, though he'd chosen a different path from his father. Vivian was also 20, living her truth after coming out as transgender in 2020 and changing her name from Xavier. The triplets Kai, Saxon, and Damien were 18 now, about to start college themselves, all different, all brilliant in their own ways. They'd grown up knowing both versions of their parents' story, Elon's version of ambition and achievement, and Justine's version of survival and self-discovery. They turned out remarkably well considering. Another text came in, this one from an unknown number. Ms. Wilson, this is Amanda from the New York Times. We'd love to interview you for a piece on women reclaiming their narratives after divorce. Interested? Justine typed back, yes, send me details. Even now, 16 years later, people wanted her story because it resonated, because it mattered, because so many women saw themselves in her journey. She'd built a career from her pain, not despite it, but because of it. She'd turned her invisible years into visible truths, and she'd never stopped writing. Justine stood and walked to her bookshelf. Between her published works sat a small frame. Inside was a photo from 1989, her and Elon at Queen's University, impossibly young, holding ice cream cones and laughing. They looked so hopeful, so certain the future would be kind. The future hadn't been kind, but it had been real, and real mattered more than perfect. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen and felt her heart do that familiar skip. After all these years, Elon's name still affected her. Not with love, not with anger, just with recognition of everything they'd been. She answered, Elon. Justine, how are you? His voice sounded older too, weathered by years of impossible challenges and relentless ambition. Good, you? Busy, always busy, he laughed. That same awkward laugh from college. I'm calling because Saxon mentioned you're working on a new book. I am, about the boys, actually. How they navigated having famous parents and finding their own identities. Elon was quiet for a moment. You're writing about them. With their permission, they've all read drafts. They want their stories told too. Justine paused. Don't worry, I'm fair. I show both sides, yours and mine. the good and the bad. I'm not worried, you've always been fair even when you had every right not to be. He sighed. How is Vivian? This was still complicated between them. Vivian had not only come out as transgender but had also legally changed her last name from Musk to Wilson. She told reporters she wanted nothing to do with her father. It had broken Elon's heart. And despite everything, Justine had felt sympathy for him. She's good, happy, living authentically, Justine said carefully. Does she ever ask about me? Sometimes. I tell her the truth, that you love her even if you don't always understand her, that you're learning even if you're slow at it. Thank you for that, for not turning the boys against me. They're not boys anymore, Elon, they're men. They make their own decisions about relationships. Justine walked back to her desk. But I've never badmouthed you. Not then, not now. I know, that's one of many things I've always respected about you. They talked for a few more minutes, about the boys, about work, about life. The conversation was easier now than it had been in years, maybe even easier than during their marriage. Time had smoothed the sharp edges of their pain, not erased it, just softened it enough that they could coexist peacefully. After hanging up, Justine thought about the ring again. She opened the velvet box one more time. The diamond still sparkled, still caught the light, still threw rainbows, but it was just a ring now. Not a symbol of failure, not a reminder of pain, just metal and stone with history attached. She'd thought about giving it to one of her sons someday for their future spouse. A family heirloom with a complicated story, but she decided to keep it because this was her story, her survival, her proof that she'd lived through impossible things and come out stronger. 2 weeks later, Justine stood on stage at a women's conference in San Francisco. 500 women filled the auditorium. They'd come to hear her speak about identity and self-discovery. She looked out at their faces. Young women, older women, women of all backgrounds who'd lost themselves somewhere along the way and were trying to find their way back. 16 years ago, Justine began, I stood outside a pawn shop about to sell my wedding ring. I thought selling it would set me free, would help me move on, would prove I was more than someone's ex-wife. The audience leaned forward, listening. But freedom wasn't in the selling, it was in the choosing. Justine smiled. I chose to keep the ring, not because I was still attached to my ex-husband, but because I was finally attached to myself, to my own story, to my own strength. She paused, looking at the faces watching her. That ring represents 8 years of marriage, 5 beautiful children, grief that nearly destroyed me, love that couldn't survive reality, dreams that didn't turn out the way I planned. Justine pulled the velvet box from her pocket. She'd brought it with her today, for this moment. But it also represents survival. Every time I looked at this ring and didn't sell it, I was choosing myself, choosing my story, choosing to remember that I existed before that marriage, during it, and after it. She opened the box and held up the ring for the audience to see. It caught the stage lights and sparkled. This is not a ring of shame, it's a ring of survival, and I'm not Elon Musk's ex-wife. I'm Justine Wilson, author, mother, survivor, woman who found herself after losing herself. The audience erupted in applause. Women stood up. Some were crying. Others were nodding in recognition. Justine put the ring away and continued speaking. She told them about the blog post that changed everything, about finding her voice, about the trust fund Elon had created, not as control but as acknowledgement. She told them about writing her truth even when it was scary, about stepping into the light even when the shadow felt safer. And she told them the most important thing. You are not defined by your relationships, not by your marriage, not by your divorce, not by being someone's wife or ex-wife or mother or daughter. You are defined by your choices, your voice, your survival. After the speech, women lined up to talk to her, to shake her hand, to tell their own stories. A young woman, maybe 25, approached with tears in her eyes. I'm engaged to someone very successful. Everyone says I'm so lucky, but I feel like I'm disappearing, like I'm becoming just an accessory to his life. Justine took her hand. Then don't marry him, not yet, not until you're sure you can keep being yourself, because once you lose yourself, it's hard to find your way back. But I love him. Love isn't enough. You need respect, partnership, space to be your own person. Justine squeezed her hand. Don't make my mistakes. Don't wait until you're divorced with 5 kids to find your voice." The young woman nodded, wiping her tears. "Thank you, really thank you." As Justine drove home that evening, she thought about how far she'd come. From invisible wife to published author, from lost to found, from silence to speaking. The ring sat in her purse. She'd keep bringing it to speeches, keep showing it to women, keep proving that survival was possible. That night, at home, Justine sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She had one more chapter to write for her new book, the final chapter, the one about now. She titled it, "The Woman Who Wore Her Crown." She typed, "When people ask me about the ring, they expect a dramatic story. They want to hear that I pawned it for cash, or threw it in the ocean, or gave it back to Elon in some grand gesture. The truth is simpler and more powerful. I kept it. I kept it because it's mine, my history, my proof that I survived impossible things. People say Elon Musk shocked everyone when he discovered I was trying to sell my wedding ring. They say he did something extraordinary to stop me. But the real shock wasn't what he did. It was what I did. I chose myself. I chose my story. I chose to be more than someone's ex-wife. That was the bravest act of all. Elon created a trust fund for my writing. He acknowledged his failures. He finally saw me, and those things matter. They helped me heal. But I didn't need his money or acknowledgement to be whole. I was already whole. I'd always been whole. I just needed to remember it." Justine paused, thinking about the next part. The truth she needed to tell. The ring sits on my desk as I write this. 16 years after I almost sold it. 16 years after I chose myself. My sons are grown, my books are published, my voice is heard, and I'm not invisible anymore. Not because Elon finally saw me, but because I finally saw myself. That's the real story. Not about a billionaire's grand gesture, but about a woman who found herself again, who reclaimed her name, who stepped out of the shadow and into the light. I am Justine Wilson, not a starter wife, not an ex-wife, not defined by any relationship, just me, fully, finally, completely. And that ring, it's not a symbol of my marriage anymore, it's my crown. Proof that I survived, proof that I'm strong, proof that I can lose myself and find my way back. So when people ask what Elon did when he discovered I was selling my ring, I tell them the truth. He tried to see me, he tried to acknowledge me, he tried to support me, but I didn't need him to do any of that. I saved myself, and that made all the difference. Justine finished typing and sat back. The final chapter was complete. Her story was told. She looked at the velvet box one last time. Tomorrow she put it back on her desk, where it belonged, where it would stay. A reminder, not of failure, but of survival, not of loss, but of finding, not of being someone's wife, but of being herself. The ring was hers, the story was hers, the future was hers, and Justine Wilson was finally, completely, entirely free. She closed her laptop and smiled. Her story wasn't just beginning anymore. It was fully written, fully lived, fully hers, and that was the greatest shock of all. And that's the incredible true story of Justine Wilson, the woman who chose herself over everything else. She didn't need Elon's money or acknowledgement to be whole. She just needed to remember her own strength. So tell us, where are you watching from right now? Drop your country or city in the comments below. We love hearing from our viewers all around the world. If this story touched your heart or inspired you in any way, please hit that like button. It really helps us spread these powerful stories of courage and kindness to more people who need to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another inspiring story. Together, we're building a community that celebrates strength, survival, and finding yourself again. There's another amazing story waiting for you right now. Just click on the video appearing on your screen. Trust us, you won't want to miss it. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you are not defined by your relationships. You are defined by your choices, your voice, and your survival. See you in the next video.